Hi guys, and here we are continuing our journey on statistics. And nicely, there's not too much math involved, at least on this assignment. A little bit like what we were doing in the last one, but not a ton. Mostly we're going to talk about when we can do the math that we did in the last section. So today we're talking about biased and unbiased samples. So let's talk about what that means. An unbiased sample means it accurately represents the population. Okay, so remember when I was talking yesterday, population's all the people you're studying. Your sample is just a smaller subset of that, and you want to make sure that your sample matches your population. So for example, if we wanted to study the entire student body of Early Light Academy, we want to make sure that means we talk to a few kindergartners, a few first graders, a few second graders, a few third graders, and so on, all the way up through ninth grade. Otherwise, we're not representing the entire population. Okay, so as long as we are representing the entire population, then this means it is valid, or we can use this data to predict, which is what we did yesterday. Okay, so unbiased, now notice unbiased goes with valid. Okay, next up we've got biased. A biased sample, one or more parts of the population are over or under represented. Okay, so our sample does not match our population. So for example, if, again, we were studying the entire Early Light Academy, but my sample was only 7th graders because that's who I talked to, okay? Do you see how, like, 7th grade would then be overrepresented and everybody else is underrepresented if we were looking at the whole school and I only asked 7th graders, okay? So biased is invalid, okay? No predicting. So again, I like to think of this when we have the prefix on one of the words, we don't have the prefix on the other. So unbiased is valid, biased is invalid. Did you kind of see that? Okay, so the bulk of what you're going to be doing today is looking at situations and deciding if they are unbalanced, biased, and therefore valid, or biased, therefore invalid. Okay, if they are unbiased, we might do some predicting. Now, we're going to have some different samples, different sample types, okay? And there's a chart of this in the book on page 802, just in case you want to look. Okay, so two types of unbiased samples are, one is called a simple random sample. Okay, in a simple random sample, every person in the population has an equal chance to be chosen to participate. Okay, so simple random sample, I like to think the best example for this is just all names go into a hat. Okay, So like if I wanted to do a survey of all 7th graders, but I didn't want to have to ask all of them, I'd put all the 7th graders' names into a hat and then like draw out 15 or something. Everybody has an equal chance of being chosen. So that's what a simple random sample looks like. The other type of unbiased sample, well, I'm going to add one that the book doesn't have just because it comes up, like it uses it as an option, but it's not. Anyway, the other one the book likes to talk about is a systematic random sample. Okay, so to help you remember unbiased, somewhere in the word we're going to have random sample. Random samples are good. We want it to be a random sample. So a systematic random sample, every person has an equal chance of being chosen and there is a pattern or a system, a pattern or system for picking. So instead of just putting everybody in a hat in a systematic random sample, you'd have something like every 4th person through the door or every 200th item on the line or something like that. You just have a system so you don't count everybody. Everybody has an equal chance, but then it'll be like every 4th person through the door or something like that. There's a system, there's a pattern, okay? And again, these are unbiased, so these are good ones. This is what we want to have happen, okay? Now, you'll see occasionally another one that's called a stratified random sample. This one is not in the book. And stratified just means people are broken down into categories first, then randomly chosen. So this would be like we have 3 groups in the gym, and we put all the 9th graders in one group, all the 8th graders in one group, and all the 7th graders in another group, and then we can randomly choose so that we make sure we have equal amounts of 9th graders, 8th graders, and 7th graders. So stratified random sample, again, you won't see it in the book, but if you do any math-based questions, it really likes its stratified sample. And those are all valid unbiased samples. Our biased samples, so these are the ones that are bad. Okay, biased samples. The first one is called a convenience sample. Convenience sample is just asking the people that are easy or convenient. Easy or convenient people are used. So for example, if you're doing your science fair project and you have a survey and you just ask your friends and family, convenience sample. It's not representative of the population. Okay? So these are invalid. Remember, unbiased, this is valid. Valid is good. Invalid is bad. So again, convenience sample is just asking the people that are near you or whatever. So that would be like me, again, if we were studying all of Early Light Academy, but I just ask my 7th grade students. I'll be convenience sample because I have contact with the 7th grade students. And so that's easy for me, but it is not representative of the whole population. Okay, and then the other one, and this one gets tricky for some people to understand that it is biased and invalid, and it is a voluntary response sample. Okay, notice first of all, random is not in either of these terms. So random's a good thing. That's not part of these names. Okay, voluntary response is people get to choose whether they participate or not. Okay, now on the surface that doesn't sound so bad, but what happens is, like, this is examples of, like, on the back of a receipt, it says, please go to our website and take this survey. Or, yeah, that's actually most of the time we're like, emails, please fill in this survey. The problem is the only people that really actually take the time to fill in the survey are people that have an opinion, usually a strong opinion one way or another. They're either really for something or they're against it. And what that does is it takes out all of the middle ground, because the middle ground people aren't going to fill out the survey because they kind of don't care. And so you end up with a very polarized sample. It is not representative of the entire population. And so that's why a voluntary response sample is not valid. Okay, so that's all of our terms, and let's go over some of the problems and see if we can apply this information to some practice problems. So here's our awesome book. There goes my awesome dice. Bummer. Okay, so this says determine if it is valid and justify your answer. So again, to do that, you just have to say what kind of sample is used. So this is a random sample of students. We really don't have to go any further. Okay, it doesn't even matter what the rest of it says, because it is a random sample, which means it's probably a a simple random sample, because it didn't specify anymore. A random sample is valid. That's all you have to say. Got it? Does that make sense? Like, this assignment should not be too much of a challenge, okay? So this one says every 10th person who walks into a department store is surveyed. We can just stop right there. Every 10th person, this gives us a pattern. When we have a pattern, that means that it is a systematic random sample, okay? And since it's a systematic random sample, therefore it is unbiased and it's valid. Though this does say determine whether, oh no, there you go, that's it, okay? Every 10th is unbiased, systematic random sample, conclusion is valid. Done and done. So really just name what kind of sample it is and whether it's biased or unbiased, valid or invalid. Okay, customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. The results are shown in the graph. Store manager concludes that most people prefer to listen to music in their leisure time. Okay, what's the problem with this one? First of all, we don't see anything about random anything or a pattern. But notice it's customers of a music store. And then it turns out most of them like to listen to music. Do you think that there is a correlation here between the two things, okay? Customers of a music store, let me try that again. Customers of a music store, this means that it is a convenience sample. It was easy for the store manager to ask people at his store. But people going into a music store being asked about music, it's probably not going to be super valid, okay? Because otherwise they wouldn't be at a music store. So not valid, okay? Here's another one. A radio station asks its listeners to indicate their preference for one of two candidates in an upcoming election. Stop right there. A radio station asks its listeners. This is an example of a voluntary response sample. Only the people that really care or really like participating in surveys are going to respond. Not everybody. This is not a representative of the entire population, okay? So when it's biased, which means it's invalid, we're not going to predict. Okay, if we end up with a valid sample, that means we can do the predicting that we did yesterday, either taking the percents or finding a proportion. So, oh, stuff's falling off my desk. Good times, good times. Alrighty, so this is, a store sells 3 types of pants. We got jeans, we got capris, we got cargos. The store workers survey 50 customers at random. Okay, if they specify that, it means that they want this to be valid. Okay, about their favorite types of pants. The survey respondents are indicated at the right. If 450 pairs of pants are ordered, how many should be jeans? Okay, so this is, because it is random, that means this is valid and unbiased. So we can do what we did yesterday. So remember what we did yesterday. We had to find the total over here. So 25, 35, 45, 50. 50 people were asked. Okay, so that's the number that goes on the bottom of our first fraction. And it's asking for jeans. Jeans is 25. And then out of 450, how many should be jeans? Notice 25 out of 50, that's half. So half of 450, 2 goes into 4 2 times, 2, and then 225. I'm going to check with the calculator just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Yep, half is 225. Okay? So if we do have valid and somewhere, it's probably going to say random in order to make that happen, or it'll give you a pattern, your system. And let's just see, yep, 50% of the customers, which is half. So about half of them should be jeans, okay? So you only have to predict from the ones that are valid and unbiased, okay? And that's how to do that section.